Okay, and I was saying it's all about the power of community. I know a lot of you are still online watching, so this is great because we have also a speaker online. And we have a couple of people still here also with us. So yeah, the power of community, we are there. And I'm really super excited. We have two fantastic speakers coming here on stage and, well, on the virtual stage. And it is Christine Kakaire, who already saw a little bit earlier, a Berlin-based writer, editor, teacher, speaker. She also has a podcast. She hosts events. She has been published by Ableton, Audio-Technica, Groove, Pitchfork, Red Bull Music Academy. Fantastic. And she's also a lecturer at the BIMM Institute in Berlin to teach about popular music culture and critical theory. And with us from the far, where I see her here, we have Sama Abdulhadi, the first Palestinian DJ and electronic music producer to really emerge internationally from Palestine. Her boiler room set is viewed nearly 3 million times, you know what I mean? So I think if two people know about power of community, it is them. So I'm super glad to have them here with us. Thank you, and see you later.
Hi, Sama. Can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes?
Excellent.
Perfect.
I can
Oh,
hear.
I can see me too.
Yeah, I can hear and see you. Technology, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Where are you right now?
Colombia.
Oh, wonderful. Are you in the middle of shows, taking vacation?
Yeah. I wish I had the vacation in Colombia. No, I have shows, 3 shows after each other starting tomorrow.
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation about the power of community in the life of a creative. And as I was preparing, trying to think about how to frame these questions, I think also for me to kind of have a better understanding about what community means, I think if we kind of separate it into kind of community as like necessity, community as strategy, and community as care. So I think if we kind of try to separate it that way, it might help us to organize ourselves around this big topic, this really big topic
That's
of
true,
community.
actually. I never thought about it into 3 separate things. That's good. That makes it easier.
Yeah. It just helps me to organize my thoughts. But I wanted to begin by talking about community as necessity, or community as a space for transformation. But before we get into that, I also wanted to preface this talk by saying that a lot of what I've learned about you has kind of been within this last year of this surely quite personally traumatic event that happened to you over the New Year's period. Yeah. So I think it's a really good practice, I think, to pause and to say that this is a moment of personal trauma, and so I want to be sensitive to that. And I also want to really acknowledge that perhaps there are, within media, and I work in the media sphere, that there are tendencies to look at trauma as entertainment, and I really want to push that to the side and be really respectful of your boundaries. So just wanted to say that if there's anything that you don't want to talk about, let me know. But let's start.
Thank you.
Let's start at the start. When reading about you, this idea of community as necessity, there's a line in an interview that you did, I think, for DJ Magazine, where you talked about how techno and techno community was really helpful for you to kind of metabolize some negative feelings in your life. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Definitely. I never really, like, the thing is also growing up in Palestine, you are based on community because that's the only way you can survive the war, you know? But afterwards, when I got more into techno, the first time I went into an event, I was very confused at the way it looks because it's not like a normal event. It's more of this space for these people that are all kind of together, but not together. And it creates this safe space and this atmosphere and surrounding that is different than any other vibe of music, etc. And that intrigued me a lot because I felt as a part of a community as well. And that's when I felt how important it is, because we all find each other for each other, you know? Like anything you need, there are other people that understand you and you understand them, and it makes it just into one. And I think it is a base of what techno is, because if you look at techno and how it started, you know, in the US or in Berlin, it started with small communities trying to just get out of the norm and just be like, we want our own world, we want our own space. And that is inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that a couple of really important points of the development of techno, the origins, if we think about Detroit, and also if we think about European techno and the importance that Berlin plays in it. Kind of both of these spaces, Detroit and Berlin at the beginning of the 90s, are places that have gone through like quite heavy transformations and uprisings and a lot of kind of different shifts and changes in economics and in social scenes and things like that. So what can you say about the techno scene in Ramallah? And I believe also in Beirut, you were spending some time there earlier in your career. I mean, what did that look like? What did that feel like? And do you have any recollections of those first experiences?
Definitely. I still get goosebumps when I think of them. For Beirut, Beirut is the place where I saw my first event. So that feeling of that safe space and that community came from Beirut. Beirut is obviously like 10 years ahead of Palestine in techno. So it was already established there. And I knew I had the idea of what I wanted to do in Palestine when I saw Beirut. It inspired me to go do it in Palestine. And that is how the transition happened. So when I went to Palestine, I also wasn't thinking of a community based kind of events. I was doing events on my own. I was the only DJ, so I was the opening, the show, and the closing set. I was doing like the 8 hours, all of it, hosting the whole event, organizing, doing the deals with the places. But with time, a community started to grow, you know, and some collectives started happening in Palestine. And then we realized that there are some people that are not in with anybody, so they don't have anywhere to go. And that's when we decided to make the union, which kind of gets everybody that is not with anybody and anybody that wants to get into music and learn music, or even just be organizing a party, or at least just um, designing the stage. You know, we have people in our collective that are not DJs. They design stages. They like to make food, so they come and open a space to make food. So it's a space for everybody and whoever wants to be a part of. And it is very much needed. I think it still exists in Berlin and in some places like Fusion Festival. I think it is exactly that. You know, it's like a community of friends that go and make a festival, but it's 100,000 people. And that is important because you kind of also see the rawness in people, the purity of people. You just kind of it is it is meditation. I think for me it is meditation. It is the other form of meditation.
There's a lot of conversation around, I really like that you introduced the word meditation because I feel like there's a lot of conversation around this hedonistic experience of being on the dance floor, but I think there's also like links to something which is like spiritual or meditative as well. Does that bleed over into when you're DJing as well? Are you able to access that same kind of meditative, transformative state behind the decks as well as being on the dance floor?
Definitely. It's actually a bit different because the euphoria is different. The whole feeling is different. Plus, that fact that you're choosing the tracks makes your interaction with the tracks different because you know what's going to happen. So you're expecting it and you're going on this extreme, like crazy feel inside. But when you're on the dance floor, you're discovering new things and everything is like the first time you taste chocolate in your life, you know? Everything is like that. And you're like, oh wow, this is new, this is magic. As if it's the first time you hear that sound in your life, but it's kind of not. But also the other thing that has to do with it is the community of people makes another sort of meditation because if you think of it, we live in this crazy world where everybody has to fend for himself. Everybody is alone, everybody has his own job, and you're just in this race all the time with you don't know what you're racing with time, with people, etc. But when you go to an event, to a festival for 3, 4 days, and you spend time with the community, it stops being that. The real world just stops being real, and this becomes the reality where people are a community. People just help each other for no reason, no purpose. People are pure. You don't have to like watch over yourself everywhere. You're just comfortable in this free space of people, and I think that should be the world. It shouldn't just be the festival. You know, it's sad that we have to walk around afraid in the streets, but in a festival we're just so comfortable.
What were some of the challenges for you? You talked about your collective called Union. Um, in Did Union begin in Ramallah or in Beirut?
No, in Ramallah.
In Ramallah.
It's all Ramallah based.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of
Palestine, not just Ramallah.
what were some of the challenges that you faced being in a place where some of the things you might take for granted in the Western world, like access to spaces, access to infrastructure, not having electricity or water being kind of unavailable? Like, if you could talk through some of those challenges and how you dealt with that through collective action.
It's a it's a bit of a mess, but honestly, yeah, that's the thing. So for us to find the space, for example, we would ask friends, we would whatever, and then one of the crew found this restaurant that nobody uses, and we just took over the kitchen that is under the ground, and we turned the kitchen into a kind of shapeshift club. So you have this kid that is really good with coding and lights. He came and built the lights coming in and out of the ducts of the stage was the stove where the cook cooks. I was standing there playing. Whoever gets their furniture from their houses, somebody gets their couch and puts it just so there's a couch for people to sit. It is more of we build the spaces until they find us doing the parties there, and then we have to close that space. So in this space, for example, we were able to host maybe 7, 8 events. And at the 8th event, I was holding an expo, and I had like professionals coming and watching showcases for Palestinian DJs, and the police caught us doing that. So they came and closed the party. Um, but that's always the dilemma. It's this or the fact that we're in curfew and we cannot leave the house because the Israeli army decided to come and arrest people or shoot people or God knows what. So it's like this whole up and down that you have to like live with, like the day of the boiler room, for example. The boiler room, we were filming that, but literally there was shooting in Ramallah, like we can hear it from where we're playing. And we were like the boiler room was gonna get stopped in the middle of it if the death toll reached somewhere, you know, like that's what we're calculating. Like you can find us having a conversation and we're like, okay, there's 3 down already in Ramallah. If they reach this number, we're gonna close. There's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes like 2, 3 years ago, they had this like really massive dirty bombing over Gaza for 3 months. For 3 months, nobody in Palestine, not Ramallah, not anywhere, even wanted to think of a party. But the day the war ended, or the bombing ended, because it's not really war, it's not two sides. One side just bombing, hammering the other one. The day ended, we made an event, and maybe like, God knows how many people came. Like it was just a peak of people because they needed it. It took away their whole summer was them watching their brothers and sisters getting killed, you know? So it's messy, it's messy, but it makes the party harder. And when the party happens, people just are there. They don't take it for granted. It's never taken for granted.
Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate
Sorry.
you sharing that personal story and that personal anecdote. And again, I think it's really important to acknowledge that when we're talking about electronic music and techno and being here in Berlin, it's kind of a center of economic realities in Berlin, but it's also a center of hedonism. But I think also to frame it as this kind of necessity, as I was talking about earlier, is also really important. I want to ask you about the Boiler Room performance that you mentioned. The host said it had 3 million views, but I just looked at it just before we started now, and I think it's like up to 8 million views. It's like definitely in the top 10. It's in the top 10 of all the of all the Boiler Room performances. in amongst people like Carl Cox and Honey Dijon and Solomon, et cetera, et cetera.
Crazy names to throw in.
What
But
do
you
you-
see, that's the power of community.
Yeah.
It's because people really need it. Like if you see all the comments on the boiler room, 90% of the comments are, "What are these people? Who are these people?" Because people just and as I mentioned, there was shooting outside, so people knew like in 10 minutes it can close or it can close in 5 hours, and they really need it. They really need to let out this anger. So when we did that, it just like you can see it in people's faces. It's either now or never, and they're gonna dance now, and that's what happened.
And have you had an opportunity to speak to people outside of Palestine or outside of kind of the Palestinian diaspora to talk to them about perhaps what resonated with them through that performance? Like, I'm really curious, like, because I know that that was a performance that really kind of shifted things for you as you're talking to people, as you're meeting them around the world. What are some of the things that people have said to you about that boiler room performance?
That thing is that people just dance nonstop. Nobody touches their phone. Nobody wants to take a picture or a selfie or just sit and chit chat. And the fact that nobody actually believes that that is Palestine. So these are the three things, and that's the thing. It is the community that made all of that, and it is the situation that we live in, and this whole segregation, occupation process that we just are living under is the reason why people just nobody cares about taking a picture. The whole thing is filmed. There are 10 cameras running around the place. Why would anybody take out their phone and take a picture? The picture's there. And it's not why you're there. You go and take pictures of things, take pictures of, but when you're in a party, there's no time to waste. We have this amount of hours and they're going to end any time, and then we don't know when the next one is going to be. So there you go. Actually, you kind of feel that in me when I'm touring, because every gig I play, I stay till the end of the party. I cannot leave because I know this can be my last party ever. And it's just this thing in my head that is always there, and it's a problem because now I'm a DJ and it's really bad for my health. But I cannot leave a party because it can be the last party in life. And it's a psychotic problem, I know, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
I mean, I think it's just a matter of context, and given the context that you've given us, it sounds really understandable. As I mentioned before, the boiler room really seemed to be a moment of shift for you and for your career. And between that point and the beginning of COVID, you were kind of all over the place, all over the world, gathering a lot of acclaim and a lot of interest. What was that experience like for you, kind of, being like dropped into these different scenes, whether different festivals or different parties? And did any of these experiences shift your own ideas of community and how it could look and how it could operate around particular scenes?
Honestly, yes, actually. And first of all, it was very surreal because I never thought I would even I never thought being a DJ is a career that you get to in life. You're just born a famous DJ, and that's it. Um, so it was really weird getting dropped with also names that I've studied in history of electronic music, and now I'm sharing a stage with them, and I'm like, wait, what? I studied you in history. This is not right. But actually, I've always thought that in Palestine we had it more of a community and less of a business because you cannot make a business. Everybody's losing money in every gig we're doing, so there's no business in building. This is why I thought that we had to make it into a community for it to work in a way. But when I got to IMS in Ibiza, actually, and I always, in my head, I always thought, Adam Bayer is a competitor of Nicole Mudaber, who's a competitor because they have brands and they kind of are competitors. But no, they're not. They're not. They're friends. And I go there and I see them sitting together and talking and laughing, and all of them, they're all kind of competitors, all the DJs playing there. And I'm like, wait, you guys are not competing. And they're like, no, we don't need to compete. Everybody has a stage, everybody has a platform, and we invite each other to play on each other's platforms. We don't, the day we need to compete is going to be a problem, but we don't need to compete. And that just clicked something in my head. I was like, why is anybody competing? Like, if everybody has a location, everybody has a club, and everybody is fulfilled. Why would anybody compete with anybody else? It is a community. It's music. Who competes in music? It's impossible, anyways.
Yeah.
Anybody competing is not really actually doing anything.
You said a couple of really interesting things there. I want to touch on this idea of like, you know, a person having an identity and like, you know, having a quote unquote brand and things like that. And I think it's really when you get to the more kind of superstar end, I suppose you could say, of techno or of electronic music, you do, as you said, have this idea of people competing, but you also, alongside with that, have these kind of insane schedules of doing 5 gigs a weekend, trying to fit in as many gigs as possible, kind of participating in this really extreme sport of being a touring DJ. So I don't know, perhaps for some of the people who are here or some of the people who are watching, like what are some of your own strategies? I mean, you mentioned kind of observing other people being able to connect with each other, but what are some of your own kind of grounding strategies to be able to feel in community even when you're kind of ping-ponging around the world on your own, essentially?
Oof. It is so hard. I'm still trying to find the strategy. I still ask a lot of DJs how they are alive. So I'm still doing my own research in it. But I guess it also has to do with the crowd. You know, like I finish my set, I just jump to the crowd and I just keep dancing and, you know, talking to people, etc. Now I have one of my best friends as my tour manager. So that's good. I'm finally not alone on the road. I have a friend with me, which is good. Um, but it is tough. But you kind of also see the community everywhere you go, and you get into the community. So, for example, I was playing in Fabric a month ago, and I became part of the family of Fabric. It is a family in Fabric. You just walk in and you feel like they're not people that work in the place. They're not employees. They love the place like it's their own place, you know, their own club. And it is in a lot of places. Poland is the same. So we connect and we make new friends. So now my circle is just too big, too big.
Global.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good.
Yeah. What impact do you think kind of interacting and becoming a part of these different communities, what kind of impact has it had on you as an artist, as somebody who expresses themselves through an art form, whether it's DJing or production, which I know is something that you're doing more and more of?
Yeah, it is honestly. I don't know how to explain it. It's a feeling, but I don't know how to put words to it. But I don't know. Everything, the whole thing, I think, because I'm also new to it, you know, it just went on a roller coaster. As you said, it happened literally 3 years ago, the boiler room. And then my career just went. So I'm still not understanding or sitting with myself and analyzing what I'm feeling or how everything is going. I do sometimes, but then it just goes insane again that I really cannot put my finger on it yet.
Fair enough. I want to ask you a question
Yeah.
that I'm still trying to formulate the words to be able to describe it, so apologies if this takes a little while. It kind of occurs to me that in music generally, in creative spaces, that certain types of people, people who are considered to be marginalized, people who are marginalized, may experience being politicized just by existing. And I feel like for somebody with a Palestinian background, you're politicized the second that you walk into the room because it is a region and it is a conflict which has a lot of weight, a lot of history, a lot of trauma to it. And even looking through some of your press clippings over the last year, this idea of you being a Palestinian DJ, even though that is your identity, and that should absolutely be claimed. But I don't want to ask you about politics, but I want to ask you about how you feel about being politicized in this way, if that makes sense. I hope it does.
It's tough. Yeah, it does actually. And it's really, really tough because I really have to have the right answer. I cannot say something wrong. It will affect my whole country, you know? And it's tough because I'm not like I am political and I do read a lot of politics and I'm interested in politics, but I'm not a politician. I didn't study it. I don't know the right words to use. It's not my profession and it's really hard. It's a hard profession, politics. Um, But I know that it is part of who I am, and I am interested in spreading awareness about Palestine. It has always been my thing. It's always been a thing I'm interested in. I'm really like extra to Palestinian, um, too interested in the thing. But I always joke about how I don't think anybody knows what software I use to produce, but everybody knows everything I believe in politically. And that is a little bit messed up because I do music and that's the only thing. I do music and football. That's the only two things I really know I can talk about.
You mentioned that you are really proud to talk about being from Palestine, and I noticed, I think the last post on your Instagram, it mentioned that you were involved in a project kind of really bringing awareness about kind of Palestinian culture and Palestinian people. I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about that and about why representing the full complexity of like Palestinian life is really important for you to portray to other people.
Honestly, one of my first gigs in Berlin, there's this guy in the crowd that came to me and he asked me a very important question. He's like, "What is the word Palestine that you keep saying? What does it mean?" And I looked at him and I was like, it's a country. And he didn't know. He never heard of the word. He's never heard the word before. And he's like 20, 21. And it was the shock of my life. And then one other time, somebody came and asked me if we stopped being terrorists. Oh my God, did you stop being a terrorist? And I'm like, wait, what? You can't ask me that. What's wrong with you? And that's when I realized what people have a thought about. And it is a little, the terrorist part is not understandable. But the guy that didn't know what Palestine is, I a little bit understood it, why he doesn't know, because nobody talks about it. He's part of a techno community. Nobody in the techno community is from Palestine. Nobody speaks about it, and why would they? It's a really annoying subject. And I realized that I'm the only person that can speak for Palestine in this community, and I felt that I have to do it now more because nobody in the techno community knows about it. And people do need to know because also techno community has always been about struggle and standing with minorities, and it's always been about this. So the fact that nobody even bothers about Palestine has always been something that really bothered me. And even when they did the DJs for Palestine with Blessed Madonna and all this crew, still nothing happened other than some clubs boycotted them instead. Some people just stopped working with them for going and making a stand or talking about it, or even just going to see it. And that is a bit sad, but me coming into this scene and talking to different artists or the crowd, etc., it is starting to a little bit trigger something in their head, like everything, like maybe I should look into it because now they're. Is everything okay?
I think we're okay now.
Because now they're personally connected to someone in Palestine. So when they see me going through the struggle, they can connect to it personally. Although it shouldn't be this way. When everybody saw George Floyd and a police officer stepping on his neck, everybody in the world went insane because everybody kind of related to that. Everybody knows what police brutality feels like, and everybody knows about Black history, and they know what's wrong with that. So everybody went crazy. But about Palestine, no one knows, and nobody even sees that there's something happening. And sharing about it, a lot of artists came and thanked me because now they've seen things. And I love Palestine. Honestly, I just love Palestine too much. So I just need any reason just to go back home because it's really a hard and very long flight to go home. So now I have a reason.
Okay, you shared those two instances of people asking really inappropriate and wild things in terms of your ethnicity and your nationality. I'm curious, what is the question that you wish that people asked you about Palestine when they encountered you in the club or in interviews and things like that?
I have no idea, actually. I just wish that they would know on their own a little bit of what is happening because, at the end of the day, everybody knew about what was happening in South Africa, And at the end of the day, that's when people moved. So that's the thing. We're just waiting for people to move and speak up about it in the world. But I don't know. I think I would prefer them actually just knowing and not having questions, or just coming and checking up on my parents and being like, "Are your parents okay? Is everything good? Yeah, it's good. Okay." But I would love that people would get more into it and would read more about it and create their own opinions. I don't mind them coming and discussing things with me and having their opinion and us discussing, but it's really sad to know that some people never heard of my country, never heard the word before, you know? And yeah, that was a big slap in the face.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it was an eye opener. And the girls that are doing this project, Ahlan Palestine, they're really incredible. They've been around everywhere in Palestine. They're showing a different side because also the thing is, every time you kind of try to see Palestine, you only see the war side, the death side, the whole sad side of it, and they're trying to show you also the beauty of it, because people always ask me, how did I become a DJ as a Palestinian, or why do we still live there? But Palestine is beautiful. And why I became a DJ, because we're still people. We need to live, we need to wake up, we need to smile, we need to eat, we need to go out, we need to get married, we need to have kids. Otherwise we just all commit suicide, because we'd just all be depressed. So even if you're living under occupation, you still need to live, you need to breathe, you need to eat. And that's why we still exist.
We talked a little bit about your collective union, and I want to talk about this idea of like community as a strategy, as something, as the basis of something to be able to move in unison rather than kind of acting as individuals. What are some of the shifts or changes that you can see in Palestine or in Ramallah that have kind of come as, you know, perhaps as a byproduct of the work that Union has been doing in nightlife over there?
I'm hoping that we have managed to create the safe space idea. You know, that's my first step. Other than the fact that we've been working with DJs nonstop, so now we have so many really good DJs in Palestine, and the events that we make are really good. But the whole point of having this safe space of the community, of everybody being free to do whatever they want, nobody's gonna harass you, nobody's gonna touch you in a bad way, you're not gonna get your drink spiked, etc. You can just trust in this place. That is still something we're trying to work on, because we've never still had a venue that is our own, and nobody's gonna come and close it. So every time we reach the safe space, kind of, the police find the place and they come close it. Then we start all over again, try all over again. But it's also about how to share and how to like just um, sharing knowledge and having this open source idea of knowledge. That is also something that is very important. Nobody teaches DJing in Palestine, obviously. So, for example, I teach 10 people, and those 10 people teach another 10 people. And now we have a lot, and we're still growing, and we're still having new kids grow up and wanting to be DJs, etc. And that's something we established, the moving of knowledge. But the space, we're still working on it.
I think that's a really important aspect of community is knowledge sharing and transparency, because that really encourages the growth of networks and the growth of community. And you mentioned that there are still these...
And the growth of the location.
Yeah.
You know, if we want to turn Palestine into a techno industry, it needs to become a techno place that people would travel to watch techno thing. So it starts from there.
And is that your goal? That you want Palestine to become a techno place or Ramallah to become a techno city? Is that kind of what we're aiming for?
Not really. The whole point is I wanted people to see. The thing is, okay, I tell you one thing. If you go to Palestine, not Israel, Palestine, most of the people that go to Palestine, they never end up going back to Israel. Because when they see it, it's a slap to the face. When you go there and you see what is happening there, it's crazy. It is mental. And if you just go from the other side, they play it in a way that you just never see anything. And I've always wanted people to come visit Palestine. We don't get visitors. We're not allowed to have anybody visit us in Palestine. So no Arabs are allowed into Palestine because of Israel. So we don't have visitors. Nobody visits. If anybody visits, they go visit Tel Aviv, and that's it. They never cross to the other side. And I've always wanted people to see. So my plan is to make a festival, get 100,000 people to Palestine, and I swear to you, it's going to make a difference. In the whole dynamic, you know, it's the whole dynamic of the whole country. We are a country that cannot get visitors, but we're the oldest country in the world. Like literally, that's where Jesus was born, and nobody can go visit it. What? You know, that's the thing. That's sad.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that the kind of international techno community can be of service to this dream for what like you want to build in Palestine? Like what are some of the kind of actionable things that people you think can do to help build towards this future of this festival in Palestine, which sounds amazing?
It's my dream. You have no idea. Like I've been talking to everybody about it. I think we're already on the way. It is the fact that people are willing to take a step out of their comfort zone. There's also this thing where back in the 80s and 90s when it all started, people had to be out of their comfort zone. It was no option being in your comfort zone or going and fighting for your rights. You had to fight for your rights. There was no option. Or you were gonna like that's it, sit at home and do nothing. But you had to do it. Now it's optional. You don't really need to help other people. If you want to, you can, but you don't have to because you're not living it. I kind of have to because I'm living it in a way. My family is living it. I'm living it. My whole life is it. So I feel like I have to. And it is a bit sad that people now don't feel the urge to have to help other people because it's not in their comfort zone. But I'm hoping that some more people are willing to play with me in this game. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna make the biggest festival, the biggest weirdest festival in the world.
Okay, let's. I want to touch on this idea of community as care, because I mentioned right at the beginning of this talk, you were incarcerated for a number of days over the kind of New Year period, but it was quite a remarkable moment where people from a kind of dispersed techno community globally, people who are involved in electronic music, and even people beyond that, really kind of coalesced around this message of this is an injustice. We need to kind of mobilize in whatever way we can to support this person. Again, I don't want to ask you about anything that is uncomfortable for you to talk about, but perhaps what was it like for you to experience this perhaps even broader community than perhaps you were aware of before this moment?
Yeah, so that is also, yeah, that's very important because I always used to tell my mom and dad. My mom and dad never understood why I was into techno, and I kept telling them I'm like there's this whole thing of a community and space. And that just does not that. But when that happened and I went to prison and this huge petition came out to let me out because music is expression, etc., and it came out from the techno community. My parents came to me and they're like, now we understand what you mean. When you were telling us that it's a community, it's not an industry, it's not a business, it's a community. And that is more important than a business. And they were so happy about it. And they were like, this is like, now they love techno triple, you know? And that was honestly surreal because I didn't know that that was happening. And when my brother was telling me, I only thought he was telling me to make me feel better. Because in prison, they were telling me that everything is bad and everybody wants to kill me if I leave. And he's calling me for the 10-minute call and he's like, oh no, Roger Waters just signed a petition. Adam Bayer just signed a petition. I'm like, no way. And you know, like, what? But it was, yeah, it made me, it kind of confirmed my feelings about the community, which was good.
And as you mentioned, Roger Waters of Pink Floyd is somebody who signed the petition, and I believe a couple of other very notable celebrities in music, but also one of my personal heroes, Angela Davis, expressed her support for your cause and for your liberation. Please tell us about that. What a moment.
I love that woman. I love that woman. I can't believe they know my name. Like till now, when I'm like, oh, I can't believe they said my name one time in their lives. I'm such a fan. Plus, Angela Davis, Roger Waters, and Brian Eno, the three of them especially, they talk a lot about Palestine. There's two outspoken about Palestine. And they've always been like this huge support. Like there's this huge graffiti of Angela Davis in the middle of Ramallah. I don't know if you know that. And it's just huge because also I didn't know, you know, the thing is you just like you're in this one by one room and you're just like your brain is going in all different directions and you don't have contact with the outside world, so you're just constantly going very dark, and then somebody brightens you up and then you're just back in the darkness, and it was very hard to process, especially that it's people that I'm just admire too much.
Have you had an opportunity to connect personally with these people in the wake of that?
No. I wish, no. I wish they would like call me or something. No, Brian Eno, I've met him in Palestine actually, before everything happened. He goes to Palestine a lot. No, I just ran into him in the street. Crazy. But no, I haven't spoken to them. But I wish, like, one of my dreams is just chilling with Angela Davis. I think she's incredible.
Yeah, I want to come along to that meeting as well.
All right, done. If I get that, I'm calling you up.
All right, it's a deal.
Done.
So you had this moment of real darkness, and thankfully you were able to be released from that situation. Because I know that you've kind of moved a little bit more into music production, what kind of impact has that sense of community had on you as an artist, as a DJ, as a performer, as a creative?
I'm not sure. It was this whole pressure and release in a way. So when I came out, it's just like I wanted to produce music, and it just like it was coming out on its own. And I don't know, I had this renewable energy, but at the same time, I was constantly traumatized and terrified. So like it took me 3 months to even go out to the shops and on my own and be able to like get out of the car and walk on my own. I still stay like 6 months there that I didn't walk in the middle of town. So it's I don't know actually. I don't know because I don't think I'm still fully out of it. It still like plays with my head a lot.
That's completely understandable. And
Yeah.
as you were talking about this, I was also thinking about other artists who are involved in this kind of electronic music scene, this kind of touring scene that we were talking about before, who are also coming from parts of the world where there is a lot of conflict, where there is a lot of trauma, where there is all kinds of socio-political backgrounds to that would really impact on somebody's personal makeup. I guess kind of thinking about the industry overall, like what are some of the ways you think that we can better support artists who need this kind of support, who need to have this like space to be able to process, but still being able to engage in this? Like what are there any things that you can think of that would make these types of scenarios easier for an artist like yourself?
I'm not sure actually. I don't know how people deal with trauma because I'm just literally a traumatized person since I was born. So I just live with it, you know. I just wait for it to pass. Yeah. That's literally my tactic since the Intifada started in the year 2000. It was my tactic is wait it out. It will go, or something worse will happen that you'll just forget about this one. And that's literally my tactic. It's just not good at all. But me and Victor Ruiz actually have been talking a lot about trauma lately. And I don't know, have you seen the Gabor Mate? Gabor Mate did this documentary, this thing interview with Russell Brand about trauma, and mind-blowing. So there are people like now, like it's also the word trauma and the use of it. It's very new in this context now. We are not used to it in this way. So now we're starting to find ways of dealing with it. So I think me and a bunch of other artists are looking into dealing with trauma and how to deal with it all, and how to deal also with the touring, with the loneliness, with these are all really bad, all bad, really bad. So it needs work, it needs work, but it's a good idea to start working on trauma. I usually just move my energy into other projects. So now, for example, I'm working on this big project that I'm planning to do for Beirut because of the situation that is happening in Beirut. I just like take me out of my head.
Yeah, I think that was a really important point. And I think also this idea of trauma being taken away from like something that's just in the realm of, you know, psychiatry or psychology and coming over into popular speech. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge as well, because you might be talking about personal trauma, but perhaps kind of like environmental trauma of someone coming from a conflict zone, somebody who's displaced, so, you know, for all manner of things. So I think that's a really, really important point to just take a moment to meditate on. Changing directions very, very rapidly. And this idea of perhaps...
Sorry, you completely cut for 1 second. It cut after
you're back.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're back.
It cut for a little bit.
I was about to
Sorry.
change directions like quite rapidly, or maybe not so rapidly. This idea of manifesting trauma or kind of metabolizing trauma through expression. I'm trying to make a seamless link here. Let's see if it works. But I know that you linked up with an artist who recently from Rage Against the Machine, who is a group who is known for tackling really big social topics, of being like really, really focused and serious and militant about their kind of political views. Tell us about the meeting between you and Tom Morello. How did it all come together?
I love this man. He's incredible. I think it was also the whole prison story, because he signed a petition, and actually a couple of months before, I think Roger Waters contacted him or something like that. Tom Morello also joined this funding. They were doing this stream of funding for Gaza, and he was one of it. And I've always been a fan of Rage Against the Machine, obviously. And I knew I was supposed to perform with them in Coachella, and I had texted him actually a year and a half before that. I can't believe I'm gonna see Rage Against the Machine come back. And then obviously everything got cancelled. After I went out of prison, he texted me because I think he also signed the petition. So I think he saw that I texted him a year and a half before, and he replied to it. And I was like, dude, I'm this huge fan, da da da. And he's like, I'm working on this album, collaborating with artists. Do you want to play? And I was like, of course I want to play, of course. And that's it. And literally, he just sends me this 50 sound bites of him playing solos on the guitar. Incredible stuff, incredible. And I take it and start messing with it, sending it back, and we go back and forth for like 2 months, 3 months, and then we get The Shore of Eternity.
Oh, I love that story. It's really wonderful to see your face light up in that way, talking about this connection. I think that's super cool.
I love this man.
Yeah, we actually have to wrap up shortly. I did intend to have audience questions, but I was just enjoying talking to you too much. But there is one question in the chat from Selena Horev, who's asking, can you imagine a party with Palestinian and Israeli DJs?
I can, but I cannot imagine it right now, because right now it is a very sensitive topic. And you know, like right now, you can have an African American and a white person having a party together. It's fine. They don't fight about it anymore. It just needs time. You know, first of all, the killing needs to stop, and the occupation needs to stop, and the segregation. And we need to have control over our electricity, our water, have a normal life. And then when we become equal, maybe, yeah, definitely. Because the thing is, it's not about Israelis and Palestinians. If this happened, being Israelis and Palestinians, we will all be people of one country. And it will just be Jewish, Muslim, and Christian, which is fine. Yeah, we'll play a gig together. Christian Palestinians, we're all religions in Palestine. Just Israel doesn't want our religion with them. That's a problem. But I'm hoping that, yes, eventually this whole problem would go. We just like mash into each other and do this huge festival, and nobody even knows who's who.
We have to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you: are there any last thoughts that you wanted to share, or perhaps you can kind of do something like complete the sentence of like, what community means to me is, and I'll let you finish that off.
Community, what community means to me is everything. It's the world. The world is community.
Good
It is supposed to be a community. It's not, but that's what it's supposed to be.
I agree. Thank you so much, Sama. It was really good to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Please, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. I don't know if you see me, but wonderful. One of my biggest highlights of the day. Absolutely. And I think the audience is also saying something similar. Thank you for the hope, for the inspiration. Thank you. And I want to come to that festival. I want to come to that festival. You are in 3 times. Yes. Send the invite. I'm coming.